we're in that time of the month, a week away from the end of Camp NaNoWriMo in July, where the idea of a writing challenge is, for me, very present right now, because there are, for me, 8 days to go on this particular occasion. And it makes me think about what we can do with a writing challenge when we set one for ourselves. Because no matter what time of the year we are, whether we're 7 days away from the end of a particular month, or we're starting fresh with a brand new challenge, and that's, I think, the important thing. We're starting with a brand new challenge, and we say to ourselves, what can I do? How can I get to the place where I want to be? And what's necessary to get me to that final goal? Whatever you're writing, it's a challenge. And the idea of a writing challenge is that we take ourselves from a point where we are right now to a different place where we want to get to, and that we work more and more with the words every day to get ourselves from that start to the ultimate goal. And I've just made some notes about some things that I think might be helpful for me. I'm currently 1 week away from the end of a writing challenge, and I'm about to head off to a coffee shop to get ready with that process. And I've grabbed my normal post-it notes and my recently bought beautiful Schaefer Imperial pen. Let me show you this. It's a beautiful Schaefer Imperial that I bought from a pawnbroker's last week. I'd actually gone into the shop because I'd seen a watch in the window that was probably about 40 years old, and it looked to be a really good addition to my watch box. But this caught my eye once I was actually inside and looking at the different items. I love the way this catches the light. It writes beautifully. I've been working with it last week for 3 or 4 days since I got it, on a manuscript edit where I'm printing off every couple of days the existing document and then going over it with this. It's superb, and it cost me very little for something that is about 50 years old. I'm really happy with that. But that was a little sidetrack. The things that we love as writers include gorgeous fountain pens. Every time you and I sit down to say, I'm going to write a poem, a book, a story, a novel, a non-fiction item, which is what I'm just starting on, we have to give ourselves a couple of pointers to get ourselves from that start to the finish marker. And without those, it's almost impossible. The notes I've just made, I'm just going to pull them off my little place where I've got them positioned next to the camera here. I've just added them on a simple index card. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm giving myself the frame of the story. In the work that I'm looking at the moment, I'm basically saying, okay, I need to create 15,000 words over the course of the next week or 10 days. What would be in that absolute frame of the story, or for me, the content for this piece of non-fiction? In there, I've got to think about who my audience is, what they are struggling with, what I might be able to add in terms of fresh perspective, not new perspective, because there is nothing new in non-fiction. We are remodeling, we are reworking ideas that may be 10 or 20 or 50 years old, and we are reapplying those to the place we find ourselves right now. So I am creating that framework for my non-fiction content with the idea that that will get me through these next 10 days. And anything that falls outside of that framework, I can discard. I don't need to include it. It's something that I can put off to one side because it's not part of the message that I want to share in this new short form non-fiction book. The next thing I put down is to break down the themes. I've got 12 ideas that I'm exploring within the project that I've set myself. And I know that if I can define those themes and have each one in its own little place within the manuscript that I work on this week, that I will be able to move to the next stage, which is to identify why those pieces and these pieces need to go in one particular chapter here, and why the theme that's over here then becomes moved, the theme that's over here then gets moved and becomes my second chapter, and it follows in a reasonable order or has a decent connection with this first chapter that I start out with. So identify and map out the chapters that you're going to bring into your manuscript, into your story, and as you identify what those pieces of the jigsaw are, you start to work out where you place them. The other thing you've got to identify, if you're going to set this as a writing challenge and you're going to bring it to fruition, whether it's in 7 days or 7 weeks or 7 months' time, is you have to be really clear on the actual time frame in which you're going to be writing. So for example, if I know that I need to create 15,000 words over the next 10 days, I break that down and I think, okay, how much of my diary is going to be a day in which I can actually write consistently for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or whatever. But how many days have I got ahead of me? If you've got that goal of, I'm going to write a novel in 1 year, you know you've got 12 months, you know you've got 52 weeks. How many of those 52 weeks will you write in? How many of the 365 days in that year ahead of you, starting tomorrow, how many days can you write in? Will you have days off for school events, holidays, festivals, things that are normal distractions? Or will you try and write for 4 days every week over the course of the majority of, say, 40 or 45 weeks of the year? How many of those weeks are you actually going to write in regularly? So, for example, will you write 3 days a week, every single week, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and will you put in 2 hours every one of those 3 days? So will you create 6 hours a day or 24 hours in a 28-day cycle? How will you do it? Have that time frame really clear in your mind. When I go to the coffee shop today, I have to create 2,200 words to be on track with what I need over the next 7 days. I may be able to stretch it to 10, but my goal for the moment is a 7-day writing challenge and looking at how I bring together the ingredients for that story, for that non-fiction aspect of what I'm writing. How do I bring that together and make it work in a way that will satisfy me as the writer and will actually deliver fresh information or old information freshly delivered to a non-fiction reader who wants that theme on their Kindle or on their tablet. The time frame from starting to finishing your project is hugely important. What will you do with your daily mapping out of when you're going to write? In the NaNoWriMo process, I started off the first week of the month writing early in the morning, having a coffee, sitting at my desk and just getting on with the process, and it felt really good. On the nanowrimo.org website, you get to open your profile, set it up, make some notes about what you're going to write and the timescale that you're going to be writing in. When you fill in the details of what you're writing, what you're basically doing is creating a bar chart of your progress through the month. And it tracks the progress you're making. So for example, if I'm going to write 60,000 words in a month, I have to write just over 1,650 words every day of the month to be on track. And the graph allows you to see whether you are over your target or your word count is less than it needs to be, so that you have to push yourself further the next day and have a higher word count. It was really clear that in the first week I was running on gas and doing really well, and my word counts were typically 1,800, 2,000, 1,900, 2,300, and I was ahead of schedule and it looked really good. Last week, which was the third week of Camp NaNoWriMo for this year, I was not even touching the line that I should be following in order to get my result. Over the last few days, I've changed my writing time from late at night, which is where I was struggling here, to writing again in the morning, and I've seen my word count go up to a couple of thousand or 2,500 or 3,500 on one occasion last week. My word count has gone up, and so I've benefited enormously from going back to morning writing. How you write, how you set out your day is so important, it's critical. Think really clearly about how many hours a day you can allocate to working on your story, to working on your book project. Perhaps the easiest time to work out your daily writing is not to say a month ahead, I will write every day at 6:30 in the morning till 8:45. In theory, that's good, but that's just an overview. That's not the detail of your writing day. I suggest, and this is all that works for me, I have a very simple approach, is I look at my diary the night before and I make a little note in my diary that says 11 a.m. or coffee shop today, writing ? For my style, I just know that I have to get 1 or 2 blocks of writing, and those might be single hours or double hour writing slots. But the main thing for me is I'm getting 2 hours of writing done, working on my manuscript, working on the project that I've got that frame of reference for, and for which I've created a timescale to get my 15,000 words done and finished and structured in such a way that I'm happy with. So for me, those 5 things that are necessary in a self-imposed writing challenge are, first of all, to have the frame of the story first in your mind. So you know what that is and you know what fits in that framework, and by default you also know what can be discarded and what doesn't distract you or waste your time. The second thing is to break down the individual themes that you're particularly working on for this writing challenge. Number 3 for me is to identify and map out the little chapters and think, where do they go, what sequence might they be in, and then you can move things around so that your map or your story map makes sense for you as the author of this project within the particular timescale. The fourth thing is you have your time frame. How many days are you giving yourself? To say I'm going to write a book this year, personally I've done that and it works really well, but what works better and gives me more control over my diary is to say I'm going to write a book over the next 4 months or 120 days or the next 8 months. Do that and then mark out which month you're going to start on, which day of the month you're going to start on, and get on with the process. The fifth item within this idea of setting yourself a self-imposed writing challenge is to monitor and use your daily time in a way that works for you. So it might be that you will say, I'm an evening writer, so for the first week I'm going to trial writing consistently at a certain time, approximately every evening, sort of 8 o'clock till 9:30 or 9 o'clock till 10:30, whatever works for you. And then to review that after a week and say, okay, could I have done better? How many times did I get to my desk at the time that I had said in my diary the night before I was going to be at my desk and writing? And is there a big divergence between my intended writing time and the schedule I had set for myself and what actually happens in reality? And you go back to your time planner tool, whether it's something physical like this or whether it's a digital note app on your phone, and you rebalance what you think is possible. Those are my 5 things. Those 5 things are ideas, they are suggestions. At the end of the day, nothing happens until you get your backside in the chair and you sit down and you start to write, or you pick up pen and you work on paper and you bring the words together. We have to be sitting in the chair, as my friend Tish Bouvier says, is push words forward, one word, one sentence, one paragraph at a time, until we look down at our device and we can see that we've created a whole chapter, that we are making progress, that our self-imposed writing challenge is going in the direction that we want it to, and we are practicing this beautiful craft of ours which we love, which is writing. Whatever the challenge is that you want to create for yourself, take the time out, grab some pen and paper, and plan and map out what you want to achieve in your personal writing challenge whenever you're ready to get started and to ink that into your diary. I wish you every success, and I'm going to head off to the coffee shop to work on my challenge right now. Wherever you are in the world today, happy writing.